Ever wonder how the lessons learned from raising a daughter and being a firstborn translate to leadership as a chief marketing officer? Welcome to Smart Driven Women. I'm Rona Job. Here, impactful women leaders and entrepreneurs come to share how they navigate their complex careers and personal lives. We look at the strategies that help them excel in the boardroom and at home, all packed into a focused 24 minutes. Whether you're beginning your journey, overcoming obstacles, or in a season of transition or growth, join us on Smart Driven Women for inspiration and strategies that move you forward. Our guest today is Lynn Pina, Chief Marketing Officer at GeoBlue, a global health insurance corporation under Blue Cross Blue Shield. Lynn was a winner of the Association of National Advertisers In-House Excellence Award. She has been named AEF Talent Champion by the ANA Educational Foundation, and she's built a really strong career in marketing with leadership roles at companies like XM Satellite Radio and USA Today. She also graduated from Stanford University, which is right across the bridge from Berkeley. She's traveled the world from Vietnam to Berlin to California to now the Washington, D.C. area. Lynn is passionate about giving back to the community, and she's active on the board of Girls Inc. of the Metropolitan Washington, D.C. area. And she's also on the board of the National Kidney Foundation. Lynn, welcome.
Hello. Happy to be here. So excited for this conversation.
Me too. This is long awaited.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off with some rapid fire questions for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So as I'm spitting them out, just spit them back out at me. What city do you live in and who's in your household?
Arlington, Virginia. And I'm a single person living alone, but my daughter pops in and out when she's home from college.
Coffee or tea in the morning?
Coffee.
What's the last book you finished?
The Martin Luther King biography by Jonathan Eig.
One word to describe your leadership style.
Advocate.
Favorite app on your phone?
Spotify.
Podcasts or audiobooks?
I love them both, but I'm going to say podcasts.
Who's a professional role model for you?
Michelle Obama.
One cause you are passionate about?
Empowering girls and young women.
Mountains or beach for vacation?
Beach.
Best career advice you've ever received?
Be coachable, and meritocracy is a myth.
And what trend in marketing excites you the most right now?
Generative AI.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for the answers. Now we go into the segment of the podcast when we focus a little bit on your personal story. So my very first question for you today is starting kind of from the beginning, almost the beginning, not quite. Before you started your professional career journey, did you consider yourself driven? And if not, when did that start?
I don't know that I would have used the word driven if I think back growing up, but I clearly was very driven. Probably starting in elementary school, I was always motivated to get really good grades. I was the kid that was in the front of the classroom, doing all my homework on time, doing the extra credit, raising my hand. So I always really wanted to get good grades. I was always motivated to do well. I, always enjoyed learning, and I still do. I consider myself a lifelong learner. I wouldn't have used the words driven, but I was certainly motivated to do well. I was motivated to excel. Driven is probably the right word now.
Well, it sounds like the actions were there.
Right.
But there was a lag in the accepting or maybe recognizing the identity of you being driven.
Yeah, that's probably true. I was very motivated by, like I said, getting good grades. I always wanted to get that A or the A plus. I always wanted to be, in the top in the class. Probably if we were to do some psychology behind it, I was probably motivated to make my mother proud and not disappoint her as well. So I know that now after having, grown up a bit and understanding what drives you. Because probably the worst thing you can tell me is that you're disappointed in me. Even if I feel like I disappoint myself, it makes me feel like, that's a hard thing to hear. And I use that tactic on my daughter sometimes too.
Was there a moment in time where you said to yourself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build a career, build a family, maybe, in environments that weren't necessarily conducive to doing both?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think my whole life story has been that. I don't know that I use the words, I'm going to do this, but I was very motivated to do things and take action. Growing up, I think I had an interesting balance of, I had a lot of good things going for me. I went to some really good schools. I had some really good teachers that really helped me a lot and helped me see what was possible. And also they saw things in me and they encouraged and motivated me. But I also had a lot of challenges. I grew up in a single family household. My mom is an immigrant. English is not her native language. Like any person who's grown up in an immigrant family, if you're the child and especially the oldest child, you often are in a parent role. Sometimes you're navigating the world for your parents just as much as for yourself. And then, my mother was working and worked for most of my youth and in 2 full-time jobs. So my mom's first job was from 8 to 4 and her second was from 4 to, or her second job was from 7 to 4. So she was home about 3 hours in the afternoon. And those 3 hours were when I had to make sure that she had dinner so that she could eat before her second job. And then she slept the entire weekend. And my job was to take care of my siblings and take care of the household and go to school. But, I always was motivated to try to juggle that. And I still wanted to do really well. My mom didn't necessarily she didn't discourage me, but she wasn't really, unlike most people that think of especially Asian parents. My mom was definitely a tiger mom, but she wasn't really on my back about my grades. That was just probably more self-motivation. Back to what I said about not wanting to disappoint her, wanting to make her proud. And also because I just did well in school. And the more I did well, the more I wanted to keep doing well. And then I had teachers that motivated me. So, I was always just kind of trying to do better and do well. No matter what the circumstances were. And I wasn't necessarily I have this life plan to do this, this, and this. I wanted to do well. And I just kind of looked at what was in front of me and figured out what was the next thing I could do.
There's definitely sort of a growing trend of reels right now I'm seeing on Instagram about the oldest immigrant daughters. Have you seen that?
Oh my gosh, yes. And also there was a great article, I think it was in the Atlantic or something, about the oldest daughter syndrome. Yeah, there's a whole thing about the oldest daughter, and especially in an immigrant family. Yes.
It's almost like we were sort of really pushed, or not, there wasn't much of an option to really not be in that position of leadership.
No option.
That position
true.
of leadership, that position of having the driven traits, right? And having the traits of you got to be smart. Yeah. You got to be smart, but you also got to be driven, because it's a mix of both. And it sounds like it's very much the same in the way you grew up as well.
Yeah. And also I think probably a little bit of what you're getting at is, because we're the oldest and our parents are immigrants, we understand the sacrifices that they've made. And we understand the challenges that they've had in whatever their home country was, and the challenges they have, coming here. And so we kind of internalize some of that, and we want to try to bridge that gap and smooth things over and not disappoint. I think all those things kind of drive are driving factor in motivation for many of us, first daughters.
Well, not only that, I think when you're the first daughter in an immigrant family, you see, and you're probably the only one that your parents verbalize to about the sacrifices that they made. I don't remember them doing that too much with my younger siblings, but I do remember them doing that a lot with me. We did this, we did that.
Exactly.
I mean, they did that a little bit with the younger ones, but a lot more with the oldest.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the age gap or if you're the first child, but you really sort of understand that sacrifice, and it's ingrained in you. You're like, oh my gosh, I gotta really make the most out of my parents' sacrifice.
Yeah. And also, I think what you're also getting at is, at least for me, I was in some ways not quite a child to my mom. I was like a person I was a confidant. I was someone she was confiding in and telling things, and sort of probably more than she probably should have as a parent and child. You know what I mean? And also because you're doing a lot of translating for your parents, oftentimes my mom was like, I need you to look at these documents. What does it mean? Read these documents and tell me what we need to do. You know what I mean? So it kind of flips the whole paradigm. And so you do have such a broader lens and perspective than maybe a typical child.
Yeah. Well, I've also been seeing a lot of these reels about oldest daughter syndrome in an immigrant family, where they end up, quitting and starting a kombucha farm or something and just living away from society. So I don't know if you've seen those.
I have not. And I will not be starting a kombucha farm.
Well, this leads me to my next question. Talk to me about a moment in your life where you wanted to quit. It has been a lot. You've been driven your whole life, but I know because it's happened to me, there were moments when you sit down, maybe it lasts for a minute or a day, however long it is, when you're like, oh my gosh, Why am I doing this?
Mm-hmm. I have the opposite problem. I was thinking about this, and maybe that's not a good thing. It takes a lot for me to decide to quit something that I've started. So my problem is
stubbornness.
Yeah, my problem is the opposite. I've had to learn when it's okay to quit and let go, because I will hang on to something and to things for much longer than I probably should. And it's because of that. Like, I don't want to disappoint. It's not even a fear of failure, because I don't think I have a fear of failure, but it's just like, if I start something, I have to finish it. That's just something that was ingrained in me growing up. And so, sure, there's been times where I've been in, different situations or different career incidents or even jobs and things where, I've had a moment of like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like I want to quit. But those go by so quickly for me. Like, it's just, I know them. It's like a feeling. I know it's more like a temporary thing, but I know it's typically not a thing where I really want to quit. It's more just like, I'm tired. It's usually for me a sign to say like, okay, you need to take a break. You need to like rest. You need to step away. Usually my problem is really recognizing it's time to let go of something and this is not serving me anymore. I've done everything I can. There's no, there's that quote. It's like, sometimes you get so focused on finishing something and it's like, for what? Like, it's like you're at a point of like diminishing returns. You don't need to finish this. It's like a book. Like, if you start a book and there's those people that I have to finish the book no matter what. And there's like, this book is not good. Why am I continuing? And it's kind of the same thing. Like, sometimes, and I have done this, I've finished books and I'm like, why did I waste like X number of hours finishing that book? I knew halfway in that wasn't good. So my problem is usually more the letting go thing. And I've tried to become better at that and like understand that like there's no shame in just letting go, because you're not really quitting. I think sometimes there's a stigma to the word quitting. And, if you understand economic theory and diminishing returns, sometimes the smartest thing is to bail out early on or sooner than you think.
That's wise advice. Lynn, you have a daughter, and I know you mentioned that she pops in and out, but from what I understand, she hasn't been out of the house that long.
Right.
How has your experiences as an oldest daughter in an immigrant family, as a leader in the community, as a chief marketing officer, and as a driven career person, how has that affected or maybe guided the way that you parent or vice versa?
I definitely think parenting has certainly impacted the way I lead. And I kind of see it as, and to your point, vice versa, it's sort of very symbiotic. Anyone that manages people and is a leader, and if you're also a parent, you probably see so many parallels between the two. Sometimes it does feel like you're parenting the people that work for you. You don't certainly want to think of it as like a parent-child relationship, but a big part of being a parent is listening, mentoring, coaching, and those are definitely things that are similar in what you do as a leader in the professional realm. I think for me, in terms of the things I've learned being a parent, one of the things I always say is the easiest thing in the world is to parent yourself. I know myself. I think about when I was a child, the things that motivated me, the things that would get me to do X, Y, and Z. And probably one of the quickest things I learned with my daughter was that doesn't work because she's not me. She's her own person. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson you can learn as a parent and also as a leader and a manager is to listen and to parent the person in front of you, or to mentor or coach, support the person in front of you. And that requires getting to know that person and what motivates them, what drives them, what their fears are, what their concerns are. And I think I have learned so much of that with my daughter because, in some ways she has some traits that are like me, but in many ways she's very different. And I've had to constantly adjust my approach because, I tried to do things that I thought would motivate me and that didn't work with her. And I a very vivid memory of she was probably like in elementary school, like, first, second grade or something. And, I don't remember what the specific thing was, but I was getting on her case about something. And like that, the way I was getting on her case would have worked for me as a child, but it didn't work for her. And I remember she was really upset. And she said to me, I don't like the way you were talking to me and I don't like what you were saying. And I was like taken aback at first. And the first thing I said to her was, I am so proud of you for speaking up for yourself. Because I wanted her to know that you need to speak up for yourself to anybody. For me, that is so important. People earn your respect as an authority figure. They don't just get it because they're an authority figure. And because they're an authority figure, that doesn't mean you can't speak up. So the first thing I said to her was, I'm so proud of you for speaking up and saying that. And I said, I'm so sorry. And then we had a whole conversation about what should I have said? What could I have done so that I could understand what would motivate her? And that was like one of thousands of incidents like that, because I don't get it right all the time. And she has to remind me because, I am the way I am and she is the way she is. And so I'm constantly having to adjust. I think about that all the time because there were so many things in that moment of like listening, understanding the person in front of you and adjusting and trying to make sure that if your role is to parent or coach or mentor, it's a two-way street. You got to understand the person, you got to listen, and you got to look at the person in front of you, not who you want that person to be.
What a great and amazing story. And that reminds me of, you asked for feedback basically, right? I mean, she gave it to you before you asked.
Yeah, I didn't ask for it, but she gave it, which I don't mind.
I want to swing back around to marketing a little bit and the idea of perfection, because I feel like a lot of folks, especially small business owners, when they start to get into marketing, they think that everything that they're putting out has to be perfect. Looking forward, I know you've seen a lot of different marketing trends. How do you think that, and I've seen a lot of, the social media marketing with being more authentic versus the curated, perfect pose, et cetera. Where do you think that trend is going? And what advice would you have for people that are either just starting in the marketing world or starting to build their own marketing department in their small businesses?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's so interesting because, marketing has traditionally been about presenting this veneer of perfection. And I think, sort of the rise of social media and all the different forms of media and everything, the good thing that that's done is it's driven, to your point, a focus on authenticity. And I think that's a good thing. I think the challenge is sometimes even the quote unquote authentic things feel very fake. Right. Now we're on a race to authenticity and who's going to be the most authentic. And I think you just can't sort of manufacture that. I think any person in marketing today struggles with, what things do we need to make sure are perfect and what things don't need to be perfect. And I think that's a balance we're always trying to strike, because there are some things that need to be at extremely high quality because they convey a level of professionalism and, they show that you're serious and you're taking things seriously. And there's other things that aren't. And that's where I think context is so important. And the industry that you're in, I mean, you're not going to be, in certain kinds of, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your health, there are certain things where I don't want people taking shortcuts and making it less than excellent. But at the same time, there's a time and a place to be less polished, less striving for perfection and just about real. And I think that's really important. And that's where I think understanding the different contexts that you're in allows you to do that so that you can find the right, what's the right approach depending on the situation. I would say especially for someone in a smaller organization or smaller businesses, I mean, you do in some ways, you really have to strike that balance because you're trying to establish your brand, you're trying to establish your company. So you have to come across as professional, but you also have the advantage of you're not some big, gigantic company, which typically there's just so much more pressure there to come across a certain kind of way. And you really can't make mistakes as much and you can't fail. Whereas when you're a small business, you're kind of in a position where you're poised to be able to test things a lot more. And you're also probably closer to your customers and closer to what's happening. So you probably have a better chance of getting things right in the first place anyway. But I think the other thing kind of related to this and kind of what you were getting at is like in marketing, we have to be comfortable with trying things out and testing things. I think we can't be focused too much on if you focus too much on doing everything perfect, you are not giving yourself the room to fail and try things. Marketing is entirely about innovation and creativity. And the heart of creativity is failing. And if we cannot allow ourselves to fail, then we're basically shutting off the creativity valve, and we have to have that.
I love that. You're giving us so many good insights and nuggets that I'm really excited for when this episode comes out and people listen to it. I'm going to shift a little bit over because I think we've started to talk about this on specific advice for folks that are listening to other smart-driven women who are just starting their journey and hoping to become a CMO someday and lead a team and lead multiple teams like you? What's your advice?
I think it's important to know yourself and know what you want and what you do well. And relate to that, I would also say is with that in mind, like surround yourself with good people. You know, you've probably heard that advice. Like each person has to build their own personal board or advisory board or your network. And I think that's really critical because especially starting out, like in anything, I mean, nothing in life you do alone. You know, I just don't understand these people that are walking around talking about like, oh, I'm a self-made person and I've gotten to where I am purely on my own. Like it's just not the truth. It's just a bold-faced lie. In order to get anywhere in life, you have to have other people around you. And I think if you want to succeed, it's about putting the right people around you and finding those people that are going to help you and champion you, advocate for you. I always make this joke with people that, you know, you always have to have someone in your life that's going to shake you when you need to be shaken and hug you when you need to be hugged. And you need both. You need someone that's going to be a sense of support, but you're going to need someone there that's going to tell you the truth. That's going to challenge you. And so I think someone starting out, like focus on getting the right people around you that can support you and help you figure out whatever it is you need to figure out or get to the next step.
I love that. And I don't think I've heard that before, your own personal board of advisors, which I love. I love that framework because these are the folks that are getting you to see things a different way. These are the folks giving you advice. And I don't think it's much later till you realize that you do need those folks. And sometimes I feel like it's a little too late in your career when you start to understand and realize like, oh, I do need these folks.
And it's not even like, I mean, you know, I look back and I had that, but it wasn't like I was consciously building that. I had people in my life that were there for me. And I think whether it's conscious or not conscious, like you have to have that. I also say that because one of the things I don't know if it's specific to my child, but I feel like I see some young people today, like they're hesitant to kind of reach out and ask other people for things. And I don't know if it's like a fear of like asking for help or an anxiety or whatever, but I think there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we are human beings and we're interdependent and there's nothing wrong with reaching out and seeking help for other people. And I think sometimes also like, you know, when you're asking someone else for help, you think that you are asking something of them, but often they are getting something from helping you. And you sometimes you rob other people of that, of their expertise or their ability to support you because you don't ask.
I remember somebody telling me, I think I might have been a teenager at the time. They said, if you want somebody to like you, ask for their help.
Yeah. It's true.
Now, I think there's a balance to that, right? Because you do give them an opportunity to lead and to help and to feel good about themselves that you're coming to them for their expertise. So,
and people love to help people.
Yeah, I love that advice. Great for parenting and great for the boardroom.
Yeah.
Lynn, thank you so much for joining us today. I truly appreciate your time and you spending this 24 minutes with us, sharing your insights, sharing your knowledge, and I will definitely see you around.
Yeah, see you around. Thank you so much. This was awesome and so much fun to talk with you.
You can reach Lynn via her LinkedIn, and we encourage you to check out and support Girls Inc. or the National Kidney Foundation. All of the links will be included in this podcast description.